GM Farcaster. It is Monday, July 15th, and you are here with Nounish Prof and Links filling in for Adrian this morning. Very excited to have you here.
GM Prof, thanks.
GM Links, it's great to have you here for this is your first time co-hosting, I think.
It is indeed, yeah.
Cast out. We had cast out, but not the the official. So great to
Well,
have you
cast
here.
out, I was nerding out 100%.
That was fun. It was really fun. More coming soon on that. But first, we've got to jump into all the things. I was just giving Links a little bit of the background, the BTS of all this, and I'm like, okay, I got a few more. I'm like, I'm getting the links ready. I'm like, this is getting confusing. But yeah, we had a bunch of things to get ready this morning. So here we go. We've got a whole bunch of fun happening today. And we're going to start with this from Dan. We added payments, hoping to encourage more crypto native economic use cases like Bountycaster. And this was in response to Jake's cast right here. Pretty cool workflow unlocked this morning on Warpcast. Posted a task in bounties via Bounty Bot. High quality, almost complete work done in less than 3 hours later. Bounty Hunter receives $75 USDC for 30 minutes of work. I paid her in seconds without leaving Warpcast. Complete flow for getting work done within Warpcast. And I think this is, we're just starting to see like the tip of the iceberg of these workflows. And it's exciting. It's exciting to see this kind of all coming together.
Yeah, I think anything you can do without leaving Warpcast is a building block towards like an actual usable crypto industry.
Absolutely. And I think that, that to me is always my goal is how do I have to go anywhere else? I'd rather not. Anything that keeps me here and away from Twitter is a good thing. This from Horsefacts in response to Trish, not even for account sharing potentially malicious links. I know I can mute, but doesn't feel great. I can't protect my users in my channel from getting drained. So this is in response to how can I ban or moderate my channel? And this response from Horsefacts, you can still hide and ban with moderation tools, but they are not in the Warpcast client. If you want this level of control, you should enable moderation, disable the recent feed for channel, edit channel, configure moderation. And it's easiest to do, I've found, on desktop. At this point, your channel will only show content with the moderator curates into the main feed, but you might not want to be responsible for curating everything. You probably want some basic automated rules. So 3, add a moderation bot like AutoMod or AirStack and set up some rules like anyone I follow can show up in the main feed automatically. 4, if unwanted content gets into the main feed, use AutoMod or AirStack, hide ban actions to hide content or ban users. So there was a moment where the moderation wasn't allowing you to hide anything. So it was like when they just switched this little thing on, this little toggle where it was changing up the way channels worked. And if you put the moderation on in the channel, you still couldn't hide anything. So that has shifted where without adding any extraneous, moderation tools like AutoMod or AirStack, you can at least hide things that you don't want to be shown. So, and the way you do that is turn moderation on. You have to actually like the things you want to be shown in the main feed, and then just don't show the recent feed. And that will give you at least the opportunity to protect people from certain links and things like that. So,
yeah.
do you have any channels that you're moderating right now?
Yeah, I have 2. I'm moderating Black Flag channel and the B-Card channel, and both of them I'm using kind of like the canned out of the box Warpcast moderation, which I think is like, they often just say everything has to have sensible defaults and it just works. And then if you want more control, then they kind of like say composability, use these other products, which is a good approach because what they're saying works for my small channels, right? Like in a larger channel, I can see why you would need more.
Yeah. I think for because we don't have a ton of spam in something like GM Farcaster. So I have different moderation going in different channels right now, and I'm trying different things. So for GM Farcaster, I am doing the basic built-in moderation. And I just turned that on because we did have some spammy things, but it wasn't awful. So it wasn't like I need to, bring in the heavy guns of Automod or something. So it's a good way to experiment too. But this is good to know that we can at least hide and ban things because that used to be so easy to do. And it got a little trickier. And I get that some people are definitely don't want they want everything to be seen, but I think sometimes that's just not realistic, especially around things that might have a drainer. And there's a GM one. Be on the lookout. I forgot to pull that cast, but I just saw it right before the show. Um, there's something like a GM app, not us. Don't touch it. Apparently has a wallet drainer in a frame, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." Like that,
Portrait in frame. Oh man, okay, that's a first.
yeah, that was the first one to me, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, that's scary." So, those are the kind of things you do want to be able to hide and not have people interact with, and just to be able to protect and not, open yourself up to liability as well. So,
Yeah, it's kind of
um,
interesting
yeah,
because their default moderation, it's basically like the priority mode, and so like they have their auto spamming. So if someone gets through and you're using that mode, yeah, you can't hide them. You do
right.
have to use that other mode if you want to like have complete control over what gets shown. But then you have to like
Absolutely.
everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it does take a lot more work with the basic tools, but it's at least a way that you can do it quickly without having to set something else up. So we do have that option at least. So that's good. Moving on, we've got lots of things to chat about today. This from Dylan, and I'm playing around with some screens as well. So you'll see me flipping things around as I'm trying things out. This from Dylan. What's the coolest thing you saw in Farcaster this week, and or what has you excited about Farcaster being on chain right now? Feels like builder vibes either aren't as high right now or folks are heads down building. Would love to know how others are thinking right now. So do you feel like the builder vibes have chilled, or what are you seeing? What are you feeling out there?
I mean, it's yes and no. I mean, I guess like everyone was super excited about frames and everyone was building frames and like quite frankly, there was just a ton of bad frames. And so I
Yeah,
I try not to really like because I have a limited amount of time, I'm really only engaging things after they get beyond a certain level of adoption. I would not say that I'm like down in the trenches. So for someone like Dylan, who is down in the trenches, I could certainly see that there's probably less. For me, who was like never really engaging with that kind of level of content before, it's similar. Like the vibes right now, it's like the similar apps that are still building and people are still creating new things. And when there's some adoption, I'll try them. But yeah,
I
I
think
I
that's
can
it too.
understand where he's coming from.
We have seen some things that are very similar, like coming out one after another, and then whether that's the cards or the meme coins, and nice mug. Um, so we see these things that are similar, and I think that kind of pulls a little bit of energy away as well, because people get, okay, this I've seen this before. I want something new. And there's a lot of talk about the content as well, like content being not as I don't know, as engaging. So I think there's a little bit of that too, that maybe we're not seeing as many people posting about what they're doing. But I also think we're just in a moment of it's summer, things get quieter. People have stuff to do. They're touching grass. Like I think it could be as simple as that. But I definitely have noticed, and I think there's been a few people who've mentioned shifts on the timeline of being like things are a little quieter. Where is everybody? And we talked a little bit about that the other day. So I think it's a few different things happening right now, but I think people are
Yeah,
also heads down building. I,
I
I think
think
that
you're
is
right. And I think the algorithm has definitely changed as well, right? Like because I see
definitely.
less new things on the timeline. So maybe people are posting, I'm just not seeing it, right?
Yeah, that's very true. I think there has been a shift, and I think I pulled those casts, but I don't see them right now. In the algorithm where I'm seeing a little bit older content. I'm not seeing as many people. I think this has been the experiment they've been doing with the algo of like trying to flesh out the spam and get rid of that. So you're not seeing that in your feed, but in doing so may have narrowed it too much. And I know that I'm saying, like, I've had times where I'm like, where's so and so? Why haven't I seen anything from them? And I have to go look at their page, and then I'll be like, oh, they are casting, and like a few things, and then they start showing back up in my feed. So it is something strange is happening right now. So I think
That's
it's
the
a
biggest
matter of,
issue.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue I always have with the algorithm, and it's happened a couple times while I've been using Farcaster, where it's just like, where's that person, and the algorithm just
Yeah.
wasn't showing me their content.
Yeah, and they were there. It's like they're there. They're just were, yeah, just weren't being shown. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's something, and someone else, I think Cameron and was also talking about the trending feed, which feeling a little off. And I think that's related. I think it's you're only seeing certain things trending because of the algo. So I think there's probably some tweaks that need to happen, and we'll get back on track. But you fix one thing, you break another. It's
Yeah.
pretty common. Pretty common in this space. This from Alina, and this is another area. So DGen has a new, speaking of change, DGen has a new way that tipping allowances are being calculated. This started last week, and there's been some controversy on this. So Alina, honestly curious about the below. Will both DGen farmers and regular users be targeting the highest stakers now? Will the highest stakers be growing their following engagement that way? As a high staker, wouldn't you be annoyed with everyone kissing your ass for tips? And it's kind of funny, because there is some truth to this where it could happen. I love this from Miguel. This season, I'll focus on receiving tips instead of giving tips. But by the way, just a killer animation.
Yeah, so good.
In two picks. So I think that, it's interesting because I have maxed out my tip allocation. So I'm trying to hit that max of 10,000. And it's been interesting to see that sort of feeling of like, oh, that's unfair because they're going to end up getting more tips, or that's unfair because now people are going to be kissing their ass. And it's like, that's totally not true. Also, kissing my ass or asking me for tips is the surefire way to not get any. Just letting you
Exactly.
know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are. I mean, in general, most people were probably used to getting larger tip allocations, right? And then this season really focused it towards, okay, well, the people who are holding DGen long term are the ones who are going to be deciding who is now going to be getting more voice in this community, because probably the previous seasons people were just kind of like, great, this is my income now. I can like post things and get DGen tips, and then I can sell them and I can pay my rent, which totally understand from those people who went through a similar thing in Bankless DAO, but it's not a sustainable way to create a token or create a community, because essentially all of your liquidity is just gonna go. So I think it's a good move from the DGen team to, at least it's a good experiment to see what will happen. And I as well think that you should maybe try to look at it as, I'm locking these DGen, like I'm locking my DGen to get this kind of like almost distribution mechanism for my stuff. So it's really great for you, Prof, because you can use it to incentivize people to create like GM Farcaster content, right? And that's how you can pay people. So I think it's a really interesting move.
We really haven't done that very much. Like I really haven't tapped into using it for like to grow things like that, but it definitely is a, possibility. It's something I could do. I did a little bit with Cast Out and using tips to tip the players or tip people who were watching or contributing in some way. So yeah, there is that aspect to it. But I also feel like, those who are holding long term have more conviction and aren't, I think that they're not, at least for me, I don't see that in a lot of those folks of like using it in a short-term game. You know what I mean? They're not going to just give it to their friends or just, that kind of thing. So I think, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out, but it is
the distribution mechanism had to change, right? Like it couldn't stay the same as it was. I think that like tipping in general, I feel like is kind of like for DGen, it feels like it really needs to be a smaller aspect of the distribution mechanism in the long run. I think it's a good move that that they're experimenting with things, and I think that tipping in general, they're gonna add a different distribution mechanism likely. We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're experimenting. let's see what's most effective. Let's see, what people like. And this is another experiment. And I appreciate that Jacek does that and is very open and transparent about what he's doing. So, and he's taking in feedback. So we'll see how things shift as the week goes on. Okay, moving on. We got to talk about Rand DeMero. So he is not the first. Let's be clear. Not the first. Certainly won't be the last to impersonate DWR in a funny manner, but he's doing it quite well. And then we've got the I am Rand DeMero as in I am Spartacus kind of meme from Alina. Love it. I also loved, where was this one? This one with the keeping up with the Dandashians. So various ones that have been doing this. And just to be clear, no, this will not overshadow your section, Ran. So if this overshadows my section on Monday, I'm going to come after you all. So Rand DeMero making a little bit of a splash on the timeline, and enjoying it. This was funny. We sing this at Merkel every morning before we start all shit posting here. V is the Gen Z boss in a mini. So taking, creating some fun content, making it, interesting on the timeline for sure. I have on more than one occasion mistaken this guy for the real one.
Me too. He channels Dan so well that he has to know him. Like there, he has to know him, right? Like there has to. I don't think it's just some random. But anyways, I totally
it's not a random. There's no way.
Too, yeah,
yeah, it's definitely an OG. We believe, or close to definitely own an OG token. So we've been. Adrian and I have been in the DCs with Rand DeMero. We invited him to come on. We assume it's a him, could be a her, him or her, they. Did invite them to come on to the show. We said they could be a they could do a voice changer, they can do all the things that they want. I have some, guesses as to who it might be. That might actually be a really fun like bracket game or something where we bet on who it is and see if we get it right. So we'll see. They said they're in the middle of an experiment and they'll get back to us if they're able to come on. But I do believe they did say they're an OG. Didn't tell us whether they bought or airdropped it. That was the only thing. But they have an OG token, so it could be either way. But even that, token, right? Even that says you've been here for a little bit. Like you had to have been here for a little bit to even know that exists. So. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Well, what's the over/under on whether Dan knows who it is? Because I suspect Dan knows who it is.
I thought it was Dan. I honestly thought it was Dan for a little bit. I don't anymore, but I did think it was Dan. I think it could be Goose.
You think it could be Goose? Okay, I could see that. I could see that.
It could be Goose. It could be Goose.
I think it'd be someone from Merkel. I think it could be someone from Merkel as well. And
it could be Horse Facts. It could be Horse Facts. Horse Facts is very funny.
Yeah, exactly.
Very funny. Yeah.
There's a couple funny people there, and they it could totally be like a legitimate experiment and saying like, okay, here's this person who came out of nowhere, earned a power badge, and whatever, all that kind of stuff, right? So it could be an actual legitimate experiment too. I'm here for it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, according to the DMs, they said it's an experiment. They were doing some learning, and that's why they said. But we said, okay, well, we'd love to be your first interview if you're ready to share all that information when you're ready. So we'll see. But I'm enjoying it. The content is quite enjoyable, quite funny. So well done, Ran. And the other one too, there was another one, Pompello. I think it's PWD or something like that. It's a different version of that. Also funny. So, it's been enjoyable. As long as you keep it fun and not doesn't get mean, I like it.
Yeah.
If it gets too mean, I'm not in. I'm no longer in. Keep it fun. And so far it's been really fun. And kind of just taking some fun shots. And this kind of relates to this and a lot of the discussion around content creation on Farcaster. And so this was from Phil. I love Farcaster, but we're in the minor leagues when it comes to content quality. If a major influencer from Insta, X, TikTok made Farcaster their primary platform, it would be trivial to quickly become one of the top 10 accounts. I believe that's true. The good news is they're not here yet, so now is the best time to grow your audience. And this was related from Just Build. One of the things we need to get better at is really supporting our homegrown creators. There's so much discussion about needed more content or bringing people from Zitter or wherever here. At the same time, we have teams like BCBH Show and GM Farcaster doing the work of producing videos, podcasts, trying to engage the community and create and perpetuate the kind of culture that can attract and retain an audience. So it's, and then there was a little bit of back and forth with Brian over the past few days where he was, you know, a similar situation with trying to encourage creators to start streaming. He was reaching out to Tay Zonde, you know, trying to get Cameron to stream again. And there was a little, you know, back and forth with Kristen and I going, hey, what about us? Like, we are here already. So I think there's a combination of both. I think we do obviously need more creators. It's always good for everybody. But also, we do have some really cool creators on here. So if you're not following Super Tight Woody, you really should be. Incredible musician, Grammy-winning musician, who's been dropping some really cool content, talking about what creators and musicians go through within the industry and talking about imposter syndrome and technical skills and all these different things. So go check out that group of content, because I think some of what's happening is, yes, we need more content, but also there's a lot of content on there that people just aren't even probably seeing because they're not following that person, they're not following that channel, whatever it is that might be getting lost and isn't getting enough attention. So I think there's a little bit of both that needs to happen. Let's, you know, sort of amplify the creators that are doing the work on the platform, and then also try to find ways to bring in new creators. So I was thinking about this morning. I have a really good friend who I've forever, who's a stand-up comedian. And I was thinking about, how could I get her to start casting? How could I get her on here? And I'm like, I started to think through this whole process of like, how do I get somebody who's not crypto native at all, does not have a wallet? Can I do this? And I'm like, I think this would require some kind of financial incentive. I don't think there's any other way.
It's tough, right? Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I guess comedians thrive on feedback. I don't know if this is the great place to get it, because I think like most good comedians, like they're just going to go do a set somewhere and see how the audience responds.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like financial incentive is.
I'm not looking at it from that perspective, but more like, you know, she uses Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and YouTube and all these other platforms to promote. You know, why not Farcaster? But then the why not is why. It's not why not. Yeah. It's why.
It's like it's always work to open a new distribution channel, and then there's just not that many people probably here. I mean, I guess it is worldwide in a way, but if I look at like the two local channels that I actually go to are Toronto and Montreal, and both of them are pretty dead, right? Like, you're not going to get a lot of people. Sometimes I'll post like, hey, anyone want to meet up? And like crickets for 2 weeks, and then someone will go, yeah, I'd love to meet up. And just like, okay, well, 2 weeks later, right? For someone who's doing a set live, it's not going to work.
Right. Yeah. And that's, so it's, yeah, I'm thinking that through, and like, is that worth the experiment? Can I talk her into it? I don't know. But that's what I was thinking about this morning as I was prepping, because I was thinking about this content issue, and it's like, okay, Dan has said this multiple times, that this is the unlock, this is the thing we need. But I'm not convinced of how we get there. And that's like what I'm thinking through, is like, how do we get these folks to come over? And I think without an incentive, it probably doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I was well, the last time you guys on Friday were talking about Dan's like marketing post, I had thought about it for a second. I was like, oh, you know what? The best thing here is really just the vibes and the people, right? And so that's all you can really market. So if people want to have a good time, I think like it's hard to say like, here's the business case for you joining Farcaster, right? Like I think that that's a very difficult thing to do right now. But like if it's just more personal, like, hey, it's a good group, you could probably get some feedback for what you're doing, and if not, you might be inspired by something you see. I think that's a better pitch for people who might enjoy it than you could make money in some way, because I think that line to making money is just too tenuous.
I feel like, but I think about this like in a different kind of way. Like this is going to take time away from other things. So there's an opportunity cost for a creator who's established is what I'm really talking about. But even for folks who are like, I've tried to bring on a couple of people who I think like, oh, it would be, they would vibe with this crew, like my entrepreneurship colleagues, entrepreneurship professors. I'm like, this is like data well, like there's so much great data here. There's so many, it makes a lot of sense. Couldn't get them to do it. Right. So some other folks that like I brought up, like who would really contribute, the intellectual side of this, the like getting feedback, all that would be perfect for them. Couldn't get them to do that. So I feel like there's almost like there has to be this initial unlock or incentive just to get them posting long enough to get the rest of that, to get
and
the vibe.
Another thing is,
I don't know.
We're kind of missing depth too, right? Like, so the other day, Ted was asking for, hey, I love Keckers for like, living and fitness and health content. Are there other people on here who are talking about that stuff? And it's basically like crickets, right? Like, not really. Like, Keckers is the resident, and there are probably a couple others, but not as many as, I don't think, as high quality as Keckers. So like, our bench isn't deep either, right? And when Keckers is gone, like she's on vacation or something, you just notice that stuff doesn't hit your timeline at all.
That's a great point. And and I think that's Phil's point a little bit too. It's like there's a huge opportunity, and that's how I saw this and look at this still. There's a huge opportunity to being early and to digging in, but it's not going to pay off quickly. So you do have to realize that like it's going to take time and work, and you're going to grow with as the ecosystem grows, and that might be very slowly. So it takes a little bit of patience, and I don't think a lot of people have that. This is related with that Kia, had some related points in here. The toe spacer and rando demero phenomenon provide a few insights. One, creating environments where norms and taboos break releases fresh energy from existing QDAOs. Two, although OGs respond better to these emergent memes, there's actually nothing holding new users out from getting involved. Many of them do. Three, meme coins haven't been cracked on Farcaster yet. Creation and distribution mechanisms are suboptimal for this medium. We almost need our own meta until the mechanisms are well understood. Capital won't flow in. I'm not sure I agree with that third point, but continuing on. Four, content is in fact the main bottleneck to growth. DWR is right. It's not marketing. Farcaster is much more meta-modernist than post-modernist than X, for example. Hate to sound academic, but no better way of describing it. And then Jacob JRF asked, what does this mean? Farcaster is much more meta-modernist. And Kia's response was postmodernism, awareness of the narrative and deconstructs it. Meta-modernism, still aware of the narrative, but chooses to lean into it. And I think there were some really good points here. We've already kind of talked about content. I think the thing that nobody has cracked with regard to content is how to incentivize people to actually come over. We all know we need it. We don't know how to get it. And I'm not sure that meme coins haven't been cracked. I think DGen says the exact opposite of that, but I think what it all comes back to, you have a much smaller audience here.
I'm going to do my Adrian face right now for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess DGen pretty young still, right? And I see DGen doing the same things that, DAOs that I work with, Bankless DAO, in the previous cycle were doing, right? And so it remains to be seen whether DGen will be resilient. I think it has a chance. I like how they've set themselves up so they can actually experiment. But I agree that I don't think meme coins have been cracked yet, because what does it mean for a meme coin to crack, to have the same market cap as Dogecoin? I mean, it's true, we're not there yet, right? So in general, I think when people look at, he was talking about meme coins for this medium, and I'm a big Marshall McLuhan fan. The medium is the message. Farcaster does not exist in a vacuum. You cannot, I don't think, run a community on Farcaster only, right? I think like you know this. It's because you guys are you have a chat, you have like time for people to come together, you have these rituals of synchronization. I think that makes GM Farcaster stronger a community than someone who just like kind of post things on Farcaster. So I think that the long-term goal for Farcaster is to kind of like bring all of those different media in, and Farcaster is like kind of like the broadcast layer in some ways. And so we haven't cracked any of that stuff yet, right? Like, and it's only through creating these like kind of community spaces and then figuring out how to make Farcaster amplify that or make it a virtuous cycle, that Farcaster will really will become to be something more resilient.
I think it's a great point, because a show called GM Farcaster still needs to exist outside of Farcaster to reach a large enough audience. And I think that in itself tells you some of the problem, right? We shouldn't have to, but we do. So right now we have people watching on Twitter. We've got at least 45 people right now watching on Twitter and YouTube, plus people that are on Lonely, plus we'll be sharing this later in clips and recordings so that go on Spotify and Apple and all these other places. And right now we need that combination or we just won't have enough distribution. And that's from people who are on Farcaster wanting that distribution. So it's not even, they can find us here, but they can only find us so much. So it's, definitely an issue. And we're running a little over. So welcome to the usual type of day, Links. But we have one last thing. So we've made a commitment to have 0 minutes of politics, US politics on this show. I'm going to break that commitment for 30 seconds. And just because of everything that happened over the weekend, we did see a lot of activity around US politics. I did appreciate that Mazam Hussein, who has been an amazing writer from Intercept, did post this here, and it was a great read. So give it a quick glance. I wrote a quick reaction to Trump's assassination attempt and possible impact on the election. This may be my last article for The Intercept, as I'm planning to leave for other opportunities. So enjoy. And it was a good one. I highly recommend. And then mostly what I wanted to show was the memes and the quickness of them. I appreciated you, Johnny, with the very quick album cover meme. And then we did have, this was my comment back. I guess we'll have 30 seconds. Bold Leonidas, this was just a banger that I just had to show. That was incredible. We had a few others. When you check your portfolio and it's up 5% on the day after falling 90% in a month, there you go. And then also this, the algo though, and, it was like, so what I did appreciate from this was that I didn't have to go to Twitter to get some basic coverage. I could find the basics on Warpcast, because as I've mentioned before, when I go back to Twitter, it feels like I'm going back to an old neighborhood I no longer live in and don't want to live in anymore. And it's nice to see the old friends and to catch up on what's happening in the old neighborhood, but also I'm very excited to leave. So I'm afraid that we may see a lot more US politics on the feed, but also let's hope it stays at the higher level of discourse that I'm currently seeing. Let's keep it there, people. Higher level of discourse. And with that, anything else, Links, that I may have missed in the last few seconds before we call it?
I think in terms of media, like, it shows that Trump is still like knows how to manipulate that media. So it's what other president would say, wait, and then I don't know. That's it's a crazy thing to do, right? And I feel like it's just so meme worthy. That's why there's memes. So I appreciate that Farcaster. I could get those memes on Farcaster, chuckle, and move on with my day, and so I don't have to open the Bird app anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that is fantastic, because that's really the only thing I really want to look at. I do want to throw this comment up from Brian. I think the unlock is seeing value in contributing content, and when there is no audience, it's an unbalanced value exchange. Great point on our content discussion, that if you are somebody new coming on, you definitely need that feedback. But also what we've seen from a couple of people mention this, Zondi being one of them, they are getting better engagement than other platforms. So that might be a selling point as well. And Brian, I did want to mention Brian Morris. I did have an interview with him this past weekend for our Here for the Art, our next Here for the Art coming up. So Brian Morris, little alpha for you, is our next artist. And that's going to be dropping this week along with that podcast interview, which was fantastic. Also, this week, we do have a few things happening here. We've had links today filling in for Adrian. We have Toady Hawk will be with me on Wednesday. And then we'll have Vibe Check with Dewoofi. And I believe that's his interview with Cameron that will follow at 12:30 on Wednesday. And Friday, we'll be here with Will Warren, who is the CEO of Matcha and Zero X Labs. They have a new price engine that is dropping today. So a lot of interesting and cool things happening. And we'll be chatting with him on Friday when Adrian is back. In the meantime, you'll have to get your Adrian face from our co-hosts. So our fill-in co-hosts. So thank you for your Adrian face. I appreciate you. And with that, we're going to call it. Thank you, Lynx. Any last notes for your first guest co-hosting gig?
No, I had fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And we will be back. We are going to replay this at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, and we'll be back on Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. We'll see you then, and bye-bye.